So I'm so excited to have these questions to be able to ask Dani today.
Maybe.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you.
You too.
It's
I'm
been a
so
while.
excited. I know, it's been too long. I'm so excited to see you.
Yes, yes. So let's just tell people what it is that you do and what the heck is a functional nutritionist?
So, what do? I help people get to the root cause of whatever their symptoms are. So, functional meaning helping you function better on a daily basis, and not looking for big, huge medical things. Like, there's a time and place to look for that stuff, but a lot of the symptoms that we feel on a daily basis, we just get used to. And my main goal is to help you rebalance from those symptoms, and so you don't have to live with that anymore.
Awesome, awesome. And I think the first question is going to help go into also what you might do. But it says, if I am eating the proper human diet, why would I need to use supplements?
Okay, so that's such a great question. I think it's like a bigger question too. So eating the proper human diet definitely is the first step in getting our bodies back into balance. So my focus has always been food first. Food is the foundation for everything that we do. That's where the name of my practice, Nutrition the Natural Way, came from. So I wholeheartedly am a big believer that if food isn't right, nothing else can be right. So that being said, there's of course a lot of people that get, tons of healing and benefit from just changing their food from whatever diet they were doing before, moving into low carb, keto, carnivore, and then eliminating so many things. And so that being said, there's also a lot of people that start to eat this way and they still have symptoms. And that's where supporting the body from a supplemental perspective comes in. So everything that, in terms of supplementation, it should always never be just like this for that, because that turns into what medicine is basically doing, is trying to just to cover something up. And so we, can use something on a short-term basis therapeutically to get the body back in a balance and then kind of go from there. So supplements should never be, I don't want to say like long term, but they should always be used with the end goal of balance in mind. Because even if you take a supplement for too long, you can shift from, one end of the spectrum to the too far over to the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in my own question here.
Please. Or if anyone has questions in the team, I just read Jackie's comment in the comments. We can always take others if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you be in charge of that because I'm really bad on my phone figuring out the chat. But if you see something, then stop me for sure.
Okay.
But my question is, I think it's kind of silly to just randomly take supplements if you don't know what you're addressing specifically. Like if you don't get a blood test or something to find out what it is and the whole purpose of it. Because I hear so many times people are like, what supplements do you take? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you because you need to go figure out what you are deficient in.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. So, there should definitely be a purpose and a plan for supplementation. It should never just be, I get people can just start taking like some digestive enzymes or some, digestive enzymes with HCl or ox bile. Those are some of the more common ones for like, to help with digestion, especially at the beginning of going carnivore and sometimes even keto. But beyond that is kind of what we're talking about in where, there has to be a balance. So if two ends, if the middle ground or the middle, let's just say on the end of a spectrum, if the middle is what would be considered balanced and somebody is here or here, we want to take what would bring them back into the middle, into that balanced energy. We don't want to shift them too far one way or the other way. So that is where being really careful with supplementation, because you can do it incorrectly and you can over supplement and all of that. So that's where, like you're saying, and, I do a lot of testing, that should be used to monitor, from the beginning, what somebody should start with through the process. And then, when their eventual goal is balance or to eliminate the symptoms.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. And the next question is, are all cravings about hunger?
I love this. I love the craving conversation. So first I want to say cravings was one of my worst symptoms years ago before I got into.
Really?
Yeah. Cravings and excessive hunger. So it wasn't so much sugar cravings for me, but it was like food cravings. And really, I actually craved a lot of fat. Like I craved a lot of ice cream, but I always say like there is never a shortage of ice cream going on in my body, even though I like to believe that there was. But it was because I was on a fat-free diet, basically yo-yo dieting on a fat-free diet, I should add, and not getting enough fat and of course protein on a daily basis. So anyways, back to your question of, cravings being about hunger. The first and foremost reason that I see cravings happening is not the right balance of proteins, fats, and then carbs if somebody's eating carbs. And then once they sort of get into a little bit more balance and they're a little bit more animal based, then, beyond, let's just say someone's eating that perfect balance for their body, then cravings can be hormone related. So hormone imbalances, they can also be related to digestive imbalances. So there's a lot of gut pathogens and candida and yeast and things like that feed off of those foods that we crave, like sugar, carbohydrates, that kind of thing. And the other piece of that puzzle is even just an imbalance of good versus bad bacteria. There are some strains of bacteria that can actually cause us to extract more calories from our food, which means that, yes, which means that even if we eat a certain amount, we might still gain or not, or experience a lack of weight loss if that's what the ultimate goal actually is. The other thing with cravings is they could be related to, emotions and triggers and situations and stress, habitual. So if you're used to eating something sweet at night, if you're used to grabbing a piece of chocolate in the afternoon crashes, cortisol. I mean, there's so many things. So the short answer is no, cravings aren't just about hunger.
Yeah. And that's a hard one for so many people because they don't know what it's like to experience not having cravings, and so until they experience that, it's hard to really know what that feels like.
Right.
The next question is, if I take a food sensitivity test and it shows that I am sensitive to a certain food, if I don't feel like it bothers me, can I continue to eat it?
Such a great question. So the thing about food sensitivities I want to say first is that they're still a symptom to an underlying problem. And the reason I say this is because there's a lot of health experts out there that will say, oh, remove the sensitive foods, that will help you heal your leaky gut. And yes, in the short term, that will help take the inflammatory load off of the body of whatever those foods are causing. So it could be digestive issues, it could be sinus issues, allergies, runny nose, headaches, gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, joint pain, skin rashes. I mean, the list goes on. So with that being said, yes, I mean, removing the sensitive foods helps. You still have to get to the root cause of why the person has food sensitivities. Now, back to your question. The thing about food sensitivities as well is that we can actually, number one, we can have a reaction to a sensitive food up to 3 to 4 days after you actually eat that. So that makes it hard to determine those sensitivities. And the other piece of the puzzle is that sometimes we don't necessarily feel anything, but, and this is the key, is that it still can suppress and affect the immune system. And that's the problem with eating them anyways. If you just are doing a food sensitivity test, you don't know what your secretory IgA is doing, which is a marker of immune function. You don't know what else your gut is doing. So there's a lot of layers to whether someone just determines, yes, they should eat sensitive foods or no, they shouldn't eat them. So I hope that helps. I know that was kind of a long answer, but I hope that helps.
Yeah. And there's a question, could food sensitivity be a response to quality of said food, for quality of eggs or quality of milk?
So sometimes it definitely can be. As far as dairy goes and milk, it's more, I see more sensitivities to pasteurized dairy versus raw dairy, because of course pasteurization is killing all the enzymes and good nutrients in the dairy. It's hard for me to say quality. I definitely know of some people who with eggs, they do better on pasture raised eggs. You know, quality of meat makes a difference for some people and doesn't make a difference for others. I think you actually experienced that in your early on in your journey. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, actually, for the whole first year, I actually resolved all of my symptoms on grocery store meat, and I was fine. And then all of a sudden, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I had to go running to the farm, and I haven't been able to go back. So yeah, for me, I had to get a higher quality of meat.
Okay, yeah, that's so, yeah, so just in answer to the person's questions, for some people, quality definitely matters, and for many people, they can heal with eating whatever type of meat or eggs they have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you in that we don't know what's going on under the surface. You might not have a rash or, you know, something or indigestion or anything, but you don't know what's going on at the cellular level that you might be reacting to.
Yes, definitely. And I see this a lot when I get into like some of the stool testing that I do with some of the, like I was mentioning, some of the various bacteria strains that can be problematic, that, you know, you wouldn't otherwise find out. And I think that, yeah, so I just think that it's important to know that there can be things going on under the surface, even if you don't necessarily feel them.
Absolutely. And someone asked, how did I figure that out? I'm a very stubborn person. And so it was very obvious. I gained 15 pounds in a week. And it was, my legs were trunks. I had pitted edema on my ankles, and I had such severe bloating in my stomach that I couldn't sit down. And that was from eating ribeyes. That's it. I didn't eat anything else except for these store-bought ribeyes. So there was something in the meat. And I had to go to the cleanest source that I could get. And as soon as I started eating the local regenerative grass-fed beef, it resolved all my symptoms. I haven't gone back to go mess with it because I just like feeling so good. And now that I know that I can get this good local, you know, grass-fed meat, why would I go back to the grocery store? You know, like I want to go towards health. So I just haven't gone back.
Yeah, the one thing I would add for that, just for people watching, because we both know there's a lot of, like, you know, controversy over grass-fed versus just conventional meat, is that for many out there, they can, you know, go get a different brand, go find a different farm, go to a different grocery store. Those are also options that you can try too if grass-fed is not an option.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the whole first year I was on food stamps living out of a camper. So that was the only option for me. Thankfully, once this all became a problem for me, I had just gotten off of food stamps. And so I was able to go to my local farmer and just say, okay, listen, I got $100. I'm not going back to the grocery store. How much meat can you give me?
Right.
But yes, I get that it's not practical for everybody. The next question is, vegan communities tend to talk about colon cleanses and parasite/worm die-off, and the parasites and worms being excreted. Mm-hmm. Are parasites and worms an issue for people who eat carnivore?
They definitely can be. So, you know, as far as the underlying, when I talk about underlying causes of, GI symptoms, thyroid, hormone imbalances, mostly, there's so many things that are rooted in the gut. And if if somebody falls into kind of that category, like I said, where you change your food and you still don't resolve those symptoms, those pathogens can be, and I see it every day in my practice, the true underlying causes to not being able to eliminate the symptoms. So to answer the question is yes, they can definitely be a problem in carnivores just as they are in vegans or vegetarians.
Yeah. And I'm just going to add my own little question here. Where do the parasites and where do they come from?
So, I mean, if I had a crystal ball, right, this is like the $1,000,000 question.
I know.
So, in all reality, so common places are someone travels overseas and they might be exposed to poor quality water or even food, and they, might get some type of symptoms, like maybe they do get sick overseas, or maybe they just get some, diarrhea or something like that. They come back and everything seems fine, and then things just, very, very slowly start to change. And a lot of times I say, well, how long have these symptoms been happening? Oh, I traveled to Mexico 5 years ago, and I don't think I've felt the same since. That's a very common, scenario. Others can be, again, poor quality water, restaurant food that's not cleaned properly. We're exposed to this stuff every day, just in life, and so the reality is that it comes back to the host and the immune system. And if the immune system is weak, then we as a human become a good host for any of these things to camp out, so to speak.
Awesome. And there's a question in the chat that's talked about libido. They were saying that they noticed, or they've heard of other people say that there's a increase in libido, but that whenever they shifted, they had a decrease in libido. And so I guess she's asking, or he, I don't know if it's a guy or girl, they're asking, what is that about?
So without any other details, of course, it's hard to give specifics. That being said, assuming someone's eating, assuming that shift was to carnivore, assuming they're eating, not super high lean protein and a limited amount of, saturated animal fat. So that right there could be something that could shift the hormones. That would be my main concern, is that maybe someone's not eating enough fat, and then kind of go from there in terms of what else shifted, other things that could potentially be problematic.
Got it. And then someone else says, mine dipped and then it improved. You are healing. So, I mean, it does make sense that it might get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, no, and I think that's true with, with a lot of things, especially hormonally. We wouldn't want it to be worse for too long. I would definitely want someone to, seek assistance. You don't want to start carnivore and then I see a lot of people pushing through, the negative symptoms for longer periods of time than I think they should with just changing their food. So we just tend to change our food, and because so many people have had great results, get stuck in this is the way, when everyone's an individual, and maybe this isn't the way for that person, for that specific person. So
exactly. Call Dani.
I mean, unpopular opinion. How many times have I been criticized for saying one size doesn't fit all? And it's fine. I'm still going to say it. I don't really care.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's the truth.
Yeah.
You got to say the truth. So other than the basics, as a carnivore, what blood test would be good to get during my annual physical?
Other than the basics. So basics would be, and just to clarify, because sometimes this means different things.
True.
So
different doctors.
CBC with differential. So that differential portion of the CBC is really, really important for underlying infections, viral, bacterial, things like that, parasites, even things like that. And these aren't, when I say the word infection, I'm just going to say these aren't the type of things that your doctor is going to look at those tests and find. So you have to be smarter than what you're working with, so to speak.
Yes.
Did I just say that?
Yeah.
Complete metabolic panel, that's important. And then, the rest is gravy, like, I like to say, but what I run, and some clients have been able to, I would say 25% of my clients are able to get their, these different markers through their doctor. And then there's another probably 75% that just end up running a comprehensive panel through me because they don't want to fight with their doctor. I mean, I as kind of a side note, a few months ago, I was asking my doctor, like, just for fun. Obviously, I know I can run the tests, but I'm like, hey, can you run expanded thyroid markers? And I listed them. And first she said no. And then I'm like, look, this is my insurance. I'm paying for it, blah, blah, blah. I'd really appreciate for you to add these markers to the blood that's already getting drawn. And then she's like, well, I'll add them, but I wouldn't even know what to do with them.
Ooh, the truth comes out.
So after I got them
out.
Yeah, honestly, after I got them done, I replied, I'm like, thanks so much. That's fine. I'll interpret my own results. I mean,
so that's probably
crazy.
The resistance of why doctors won't run tests, because they can't read them.
A lot of the times, yes, absolutely. So to answer your question, expanded thyroid, minimum would be free T3, free T4, TPO, TG antibodies, reverse T3. So that would be the minimum on the expanded thyroid. Fasting insulin, believe it or not, A1C, of course, glucose, that's some of the metabolic panel. Some doctors, I just had someone tell me the other day, my doctor wouldn't run fasting insulin. This is someone who had a history of blood sugar imbalances too.
Good grief.
And then there's some other, there's other markers like, albumin, globulin, protein, some of the liver markers, kidney markers, all those things. One marker, as I like to say, one marker doesn't tell us a lot, but all the markers together, they tell us a lot of things. Vitamin D, of course, as well. It's super important for the immune system, all of that. So those are just some of them that I would definitely suggest, at least on an annual basis if possible.
Got it. There's a question in the chat that says, if we add some carbs like rice, onion, etc., in low quantities along with fatty meats and eggs, just for the sake of palatability and getting used to the carnivore, is that a problem?
Okay, so palatability, I would not suggest rice. I would do more of flavorful, onions, garlic, spices, maybe a few, low glycemic, low oxalate veggies kind of thing. That's where I would go in terms of flavor. I wouldn't go to rice. I mean, yeah, so.
I agree. The next question is, what are some possible reasons that I am not losing weight at all on keto or carnivore? And can you really fix thyroid problems?
Okay, so I might have to ask you to repeat, but reasons why people don't lose weight, unpopular opinion, is that you can eat too much on keto and you can eat too much on carnivore. If you're eating more than what your body burns on a daily basis, your individual body, your metabolism, all of that, you might gain weight. Carnivore is not a ticket to eat all the food, all the carnivore food in the world and just lose weight. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, that being said, looking at, other reasons, underlying imbalances, hormone imbalances, GI imbalances, poor sleep, lifestyle. Hi, Tammy. Poor sleep. What do I say? Lifestyle. Okay, so sleep is just important as to weight loss as working out is. Too much exercise, too little exercise, stress. So we don't often realize how underlying stressors and daily stressors can affect us. All of those things can definitely affect weight loss. Now, what was the thyroid question?
Can you really fix thyroid problems?
Okay, loaded. So I love this question because so many people are struggling with thyroid imbalances. And what people don't realize about the thyroid is that the thyroid is part of an entire system. Okay, so we often, many people are put on medications to improve their T3 or their T4 levels. And that's all great, but the T3 and T4 are at the bottom of the chain on this axis, if you will, that starts at the brain, goes to the pituitary, talks to the adrenals, TSH, and then goes down to the thyroid. So without getting too sciencey, it's definitely possible to improve thyroid health, but just taking T3 or T4 is actually going to shut down the whole system above it. That actually is what needs to be addressed as to why someone's not making enough T4 or T3. Now, a common thing, with low carb and carnivore and, this way of eating is like, some people say, oh, my T3 levels are naturally a little bit lower. If you feel fantastic and your T3 levels are a little bit lower, that might be fine for you. But most people that I see that have those lower levels or an imbalance somewhere along that spectrum or that chain or in that system, they're not feeling fantastic. They're not losing the weight that they want to lose. They're stuck. There's a lot of other symptoms going on. So we also have to clinically correlate the lab test results with the person and what we're actually seeing.
Yeah, and like you said, get to the root cause. Don't just supplement the thyroid or the what is it, T3 or T4, like to find out why your body's not producing it.
Right. And so a lot of people also don't realize that conversion from T4 to T3. So T3 talks to all the cells, tells us to have energy, lose weight, make hair, have strong hair follicles, all of that stuff. That conversion happens in the gut and the liver. So if there is something going on in the gut and the liver, that is the first place to go to, kind of look as far as underlying imbalances go that can help correct that breakdown, so to speak.
Got it. And then I did see in the chat someone said, what's wrong with rice?
So rice is a grain. Yes, it's a gluten-free grain. So if you're going to choose any grain, rice is definitely a better option. But it's still higher glycemic and higher in carbs. So if your ultimate goal is carnivore and you're just looking for palatability, I see no reason to add rice, quite frankly.
Got it. What would you tell a person just starting out on carnivore?
I would say definitely, have variety. So unless someone is needing to start carnivore and go straight into like the lion diet, or they've got some major histamine issues or, sensitivity to dairy, things like that. I'm a full believer in variety of foods, different meats, different seafood, dairy if possible. When I say dairy, I'm talking about, cheese, raw cheese if possible, or just cheese, Greek yogurt that's low in carbs, low in sugar. Not necessarily milk, because milk is going to be higher in both sugar and carbs. Yes, I know it's animal based. But my number one thing would be variety. Make sure they're getting enough fat on a daily basis, salt and electrolytes if needed. I see that they're underused often. We need those minerals. Electrolyte minerals are like, we could consider them the electricity in our brain. And so much brain fog and fatigue. And not only that, the body needs minerals and other vitamins as cofactors to make hormones with cholesterol. And I think a lot of people forget that. Judy Cho just did a great post the other day about the importance of magnesium. And there's so many people telling people don't use magnesium, don't use electrolytes, all this stuff. And I don't agree with that. So, and I'm not saying to overuse it, because if you don't need it, you don't need it. But I think that it's definitely underused.
Absolutely. What tests or labs do you feel are most helpful to get just a snapshot of what is going on with a client? And if you had all the money in the world, what tests and labs would you get on a regular or one-time basis for a client?
Okay, so one-time basis, I would definitely, I mean, a lot of the labs that I actually run, so that would be like a comprehensive blood panel with, you know, expanded markers like I was just mentioning. I think there's like 60 something markers on the panel that I run. You know, hormone testing. So I prefer urine or even saliva to blood. Blood can be helpful to know what's happening, at least with sex hormones. Quite frankly, I think blood is worthless for cortisol levels and stress hormone levels.
Like a Dutch test?
Yes, exactly. Dutch test is, you know, the urine test that I use, as you know.
Awesome.
And then stool testing is really helpful. And then sometimes I do like organic acids testing with urine. Those are kind of like my go-tos that I get enough information to put a full treatment plan together for a client who is experiencing, you know, any number of hundreds of symptoms. That being said, if someone just has the opportunity to get one test, I would definitely say do a blood test. If they are having some hormone imbalances, making sure that they can try to add some of those expanded thyroid markers or even sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And just as a side note, you must be specific when you request those sex hormones. Otherwise, you might get like FSH, which doesn't tell us anything with what we want to know in terms of daily function. So
how could they be specific?
Oh, they just need to ask their provider for the specific hormone levels that they want versus just saying like, "Oh, can you test my sex hormones?" Because typically like they won't always naturally test testosterone for women, even though testosterone is super important.
Got it.
Of course, for many things. You know, side note, a lot of people, of course, blame thyroid for hair loss, but low testosterone in women can be another major cause of hair loss.
Got it. And someone sent this to me right before we met for this live. Do you think dairy is okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it can go two ways. We are eliminating so many foods with low carb, keto, carnivore way of eating. Obviously, we're doing elimination for a reason because of whatever symptoms are happening. That being said, going back to what I was saying earlier, if dairy, you know, with variety, if dairy is problematic and you don't tolerate it, then I would remove it. I've been off dairy now, everything except butter, since January 1st myself. I don't like to say that it's good, bad, or otherwise. Again, it depends on the individual person. It's good for some. Some can tolerate it fine with zero issues, and it's bad, you know, for others, given whatever they might have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a source or a quality issue as well. You know,
Yeah.
like the difference between raw milk and you know, pasteurized milk.
Yeah, for sure.
And my very last question is, how can people reach you and what would you like them to know about working with you?
Wow, that's okay. So, what would I like them to know? So, it's never a quick fix.
Yes.
If anyone promises you a quick fix, they are lying to you. Run away.
Yes.
I don't care if you don't ever contact me, but run away from whoever is telling you that information. That's number one. My goal is always to get to the root cause of the problem, and it might not, you know, look the way you think it's going to look. So that being said, the reason I say that is because, you know, weight loss happens as a byproduct of the body being healthy and in balance. And if someone has been, you know, plagued with symptoms for 10 to 15 to 20 years, your symptoms are not going to go away in 30 days. And some of them might, you know, just to be real, some of them might. That being said, you know, I have carnivores that come to me that have been carnivore for 2 years. They're still B12 deficient. They're still B6 deficient. They still have a lot of things going on because the food change wasn't the root cause of the actual problem. So again, to kind of circle back, that was kind of a squirrel. But just knowing that, you know, my goal is always to get to the root cause of the problem. And, you know, it just might not look the way you think it's going to look, but, you know, rebalancing the body from the inside out is always the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. And I believe that there's layers,
Yes.
that
It's like unpeeling the layers of an onion. It's absolutely.
yeah. 'Cause like, if you would have asked me, 3 years ago, do you have anxiety or depression or whatever? I'd be like, yes, absolutely. If you ask me today, do you have anxiety, depression? No, not compared to there. But can it get better? Who knows? I didn't know how good felt until I felt good.
Right.
And so how am I going to know how better feels? I think that there's levels of healing that happen that we just haven't even experienced yet.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, from my own personal experience, I can definitely speak to that with my implants, right? So a lot of, you know, you don't see them now because they're not here, but I had my breast implants removed last year, and that, you know, had a lot of success before I had the implants, had symptoms 3 weeks of getting the implants. Long story short, fast forward, got them out, and had a lot of things, you know, reverse within days to weeks of getting of removing the implants. And then that being said, I still have things that I'm working on as a result of that. And so it is always, you know, it is always a journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if anybody does want to follow you, they can find you. Where are the best places to find you?
Okay, so on Instagram, carnivore.keto.fitness. My website is nutritionthenaturalway.com. Feel free to shoot me a DM or email directly, Dani at nutritionthenaturalway.com as well. Any of those places I can be found.
Awesome. And thank you so much. You have quickly become such a good friend of mine, and I'm so grateful. And I literally have never spoken to you and not learned something.
Oh,
so
thank
you. Thank you very much. Yeah, definitely. Dani definitely knows her stuff.
Thanks, I appreciate that so much.
All right. Well, thanks. And I will be talking to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Tammy. I see Tammy commented. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks, you guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.